Hi, this is Ed Fitzpatrick. If you enjoy local politics as much as I do, be sure to join our friends at Rhode Island PBS for the show A Lively Experiment. Hosted by Jim Hummel, the weekly series features journalists, pundits, and politicians debating the stories and issues that matter most to us Rhode Islanders. Tune in to A Lively Experiment and be part of the conversation. Fridays at 7 p.m. on Rhode Island PBS and wherever you get your podcasts. From the Boston Globe, this is Rhode Island Report. I'm Ed Fitzpatrick. Welcome back to the podcast where we bring you big conversations from our very small state. Who should have access to the shore in Rhode Island? It's an escalating battle between property owners, towns, and the public. Isabella Jibilian, a producer at Rhode Island PBS Weekly, and Alex Nunes, the South County Bureau Chief at the Public's Radio, recently collaborated on 2 episodes about this topic. They're here to talk about this ongoing issue. Isabella and Alex, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning.
So, Alex, I know you're down in the Westerly Bureau. What first got you interested in this issue of beach access?
I first got interested in 2020 during the pandemic. At that time, I was hearing that as more people were getting outside, trying to social distance, find recreational activities outdoors, private property owners were getting more aggressive, trying to block people from beach areas. So I did a story on that. And then subsequently, there had been a vote in Narragansett on expanding parking in Point Judith. And both those stories, there just had been like humongous response, like tons of readers, tons of comments. People were obviously interested in it. So then from there, we did a series on shoreline fire districts. And there's so much to cover, so many angles, really.
What do they mean by a fire district in this sense?
Yeah, so in Rhode Island, we have fire districts across the state, basically fire departments that serve, what has historically been a more rural, remote area. In the case in South County, we have these fire districts that started with the stated purpose of providing fire services, but over time evolved into something very different. For instance, Bonnet Shores in Narragansett doesn't have a fire department and doesn't even pay money towards fire services. Others like Weekapaug pay neighboring fire districts to fight fires. Some of them provide water. They have other purposes, but the big thing you see in South County is controlling beachfront area.
Isabel, what got you interested in this topic?
My role was really taking Alex's reporting, which has been so in-depth, and considering the visual evidence from old maps to aerial photos that show old paths, and helping reconsider a lot of these questions and helping the public view the evidence in full.
After we merged, the Public's Radio and RIPBS, it seemed like a good topic to explore.
So summer's over, but it sounds like the battle over beach access is continuing. Alex, can you bring us up to date on the dispute over who has the right to be on Narragansett's town beach?
The most recent news in terms of what we covered in the story is related to the parking on Ocean Road.
And what was the request?
The request was to have 3-hour parking.
3-hour parking. And what did the advocates for greater beach access think of that?
Advocates for greater beach access say that parking's already restricted enough, and that if you're going to put a time limit on it, it would just further get in the way of people's ability to go to Narragansett Town Beach for the day.
And what do local residents of Narragansett say?
Yeah, so they think it's too crowded, and they think that they, as the local residents and property owners, deserve some priority in terms of the beach access. There was a capacity study done that actually found that it's not overcrowded, but nonetheless, they say it feels overcrowded. And the reason given for the time-restricted proposal is that they felt that it would lessen traffic congestion, that people wouldn't be looping around Ocean Road looking for a parking spot. The access advocates said that felt like a pretext for really just trying to restrict how long people could be on the beach. And that had to go before the State Traffic Commission for approval, and the commission turned it down.
So does that end it if the State Commission said no? Is that the end of the story?
I think so. maybe they could come back in a year or two, but it seems like it resolves it at least for now.
Are there other indications of this tension over access to Narragansett Town Beach besides the 3-hour parking signs?
Oh, there's plenty of areas that people are upset about. For one, the cost of going to the beach. In 2010, it cost $5 per person. Today, it costs $12 per person. It's been as high as $15 per person. And then the other area of dispute is about parking at the beach, basically about how many spaces are reserved for residents and how many spaces are reserved for visitors. So those are two other areas that people get pretty fired up about and are currently under debate.
And this is a town beach, right, Alex? But don't a lot of people treat it as one of the state's real iconic beaches? I always see people surfing there. Whenever there's a storm, there's some guy with a surfboard.
Right, yeah. It is a town beach, but I think people in Rhode Island and even outside of Rhode Island, like I grew up in Connecticut and remember going to Narragansett Town Beach as a kid, kind of see it as like an unofficial state beach that everyone goes to. It's kind of part of like the tradition and the culture of it.
So you both touched on this very timely topic in your piece about a beach in Westerly. Isabella, can you outline the legal battle that you covered over access to the Quannaquantag Barrier Beach?
Currently, there's a dispute over a right-of-way called the Spring Avenue Extension.
Just 50 feet wide, right?
50 feet wide in old maps. But others say today that that land is privately owned and that no such right-of-way exists.
So what is blocking access on that right-of-way right now?
So currently, that part of land has a lot of trees and bushes and a fence. Activists say that there used to be a sandy path that went down to the beach there. There are public parking spaces in front of where the activists say that that path was, but the only way to get to the beach really is via a boardwalk that's next to where this sandy trail used to be. That boardwalk is for members only of the Weekapaug Fire District.
So you interviewed Ellen Kane. Who is she and what does she say about the Spring Avenue access point?
Ellen Kane is a Westerly resident and a large voice for coastal access in Westerly.
I truly believe everyone should have access to the beach. This is really an issue of, sort of the haves and the have-nots.
She's made the claim that there was a sandy path to the beach here.
The fire district cannot logically, sensibly say that there were public parking spaces there only for people to listen to the sound of the waves.
And B, that it was blocked.
And the fence is immediately in front of those parking spaces.
Also that a public right-of-way exists here and that it should be unblocked.
And you also interviewed Bob McCann. Who is he and what does he say?
Bob McCann, at the time of our interview, was the head of the Weekapaug Fire District. Since then, his term has ended.
The issue is property and private property rights.
He says that this is private land, that no such right-of-way exists, and that people are unfairly calling for a right-of-way here.
I've seen all the aerial photographs. I will state that I have not seen a delineated trail. I don't know anyone that can actually point out and say this was the path that was used.
Why would there be public parking in front of land that's not a public access point?
Well, this is a public road, so I'm sure it's just an extension of the public road. I don't know.
There's a footnote on Ellen Kane, too, if you're interested. After our story ran, the Weekapaug Fire District requested to depose her for their legal case in this.
Oh, interesting. As a result of seeing
her
interview?
They said to the the other side, the lawyers arguing for access, they actually said, you've withheld this person from us. She seems to have knowledge on this subject, and we'd like to depose her.
And did they?
They haven't yet, but I believe it's going forward.
And I think I saw something about the Rhode Island chapter of the ACLU objecting to that legal tactic.
Yeah,
what did they say?
They said it felt like retaliation, that if someone was going to speak out publicly in favor of a right-of-way, that they'd get deposed. There was something that happened late last year, early this year, where people were donating to a GoFundMe page to support this effort, and they started getting deposition notices.
Because they gave to a GoFundMe page?
Yeah. So ACLU said, like, how could someone who gave to a GoFundMe page possibly have some level of expertise that you would depose them for a legal case? But that Spring Avenue, in terms of how much the Weekapaug Fire District has spent on attorneys, is really high. In the springtime, I did a public records request, and it was around $600,000. Now it's probably approaching a lot higher than that because they have multiple legal fights going on related to access at the Quanticook Barrier Beach.
Isabella, I think you asked Bob McCann about the legal strategy of deposing people for the GoFundMe page. What did he say?
Bob McCann said,
I consider that to be our legal team doing everything they can to protect the private property rights of Weekapaug.
Meanwhile, the ACLU activists are saying that this is an intimidation tactic.
We'll have more with Alex and Isabella after a quick break. When you want to go beyond the headlines, let me recommend Rhode Island PBS Weekly. Rhode Island PBS Weekly is an award-winning news magazine broadcast that gives you the full story, powered by investigative journalism and narrative storytelling. New episodes of Rhode Island PBS Weekly drop Sundays at 7:30 p.m. on Rhode Island PBS. Watch past episodes at ripbs.org/weekly. That's ripbs.org/weekly. Alex, this legal battle has drawn the attention of Attorney General Peter Nerona. What does he have to say about the case?
Peter Nerona, his office thinks that Spring Avenue is a right-of-way legally.
I think the right of access of Rhode Islanders to enjoy our shoreline is something that the founders of Rhode Island took very seriously.
His team, his environmental team, is involved in the Weekapaug case, but also another case in Watch Hill for access to Napatree Point.
Isabella, you noted in the piece that one of the keys to this case is an old map. What does that old map show?
So one of the major pieces of evidence that is being used by activists in this case is this 1948 map that was filed with the town of Westerly. And on the map, along what we call now the Spring Avenue extension, there is a path to the beach, and it says right of way on it. You can also see in other parts of the map, it says private. And so the question that they're asking is, okay, if this was private, why wouldn't it say private? Why would it say right of way? And so that's a major piece of evidence in this case.
So what does the fire district and Bob McCann say about that?
They don't say much about the map. Why would right of way be written on part of the map and private being written on other parts of the map?
I've got to ask you to speak to my lawyer. Speak to our legal team, please.
Most of their case is really focused on proving that they own the land and control the land. So most of their case hinges upon evidence like, here are deeds from this land, or here's evidence that we have granted easements in this area. And so they don't address it directly so much. They're more focused on other pieces of evidence.
And has the case come before the Coastal Resources Management Council, the state agency that regulates the coast?
Yeah, that was how it all started when the town council of Westerly referred it to CRMC to investigate it for possible designation as a public right-of-way. And then the Superior Court case evolved out of that when Weekapaug filed a lawsuit.
So is it still before CRMC?
Yes.
And where does the lawsuit stand in Superior Court?
It's still pending in Superior Court. There was a hearing earlier this summer where the two sides were given more time to put together information memorandum to send into the judge, but it's still pending.
Is the town of Westerly incurring any legal costs? Are they involved in the litigation?
Yes, yeah. Well, it's hard to say exactly how much. I have tried getting those records, but the town solicitor, Bill Conley, he redacts all the descriptions from his legal invoices, so it's really impossible to see what he's charging for what. But two counselors have said publicly that they're spending on shoreline access cases in total in Weekapaug and Watch Hill $20,000 a month in legal expenses.
Isabella, let me ask you, why are the parties sinking so much money, so much resources, so much energy into this fight? Why is it so important to them?
Well, first thing, beach access is pretty personal. People care a lot. We live in the ocean state. People love the ocean. That's why a lot of people live here. But also, you got to keep in mind that a lot of people's home prices are tied to beach access. Having a private beach is a huge boon for the value of your property. And so for many, it's probably worth it to sink a lot of money into this because having a private beach translates to a higher home valuation.
I think there's an element, too, where it does have the feeling of like a 1% versus the 99%. And a lot of the people who are the strongest beach advocates actually live in these communities and know like the sort of the secret ways to get to the beach. So they sort of have access themselves. And there are some beach access advocates who, few, but some, they don't even enjoy going to the beach themselves. They just see it more as this fight they want to fight.
Yeah, at the end of the piece, Alex, you suggested this legal battle could be a turning point in this struggle over shore access in Rhode Island. So what's the larger context? Why is this case so important?
Well, the Quanticottag Barrier Beach is about 1.7 miles, and there's presently no designated right-of-way to the beach. And for context, Misquamicut State Beach is about 0.6 of a mile. So the possibility of having that much beach open up to the public that is now restricted is, a lot of potential there. There is a perception that if the public got momentum, maybe it could lead to other favorable cases.
Alex, I've always been fascinated by the fact that the Rhode Island Constitution addresses shore access and even the gathering of seaweed. Can you tell us a bit more about what it says?
Yeah, so the Rhode Island Constitution says that people have the right to what they call privileges of the shore, including gathering seaweed, walking along the shore, fishing. And what happened in recent years as this issue got a lot more attention is people wanted there to be really a designated area that says this is the shore that we have these rights at. And there was this new state law passed and enacted that defined the shoreline as the seaweed line plus 10 feet towards the land.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. So is that settled now? Settled law?
That's the law of the land right now,
right.
But it's in court. People are fighting that. It's going to the Rhode Island Supreme Court. I think most people are following it and are pretty confident about that.
And Alex, let me ask you too, you just reported that a westerly property owner making a legal challenge against Rhode Island's new shoreline access law has been charged with repeatedly vandalizing a beach right-of-way sign near his home. Tell us about that.
Yes, yeah. So there are two cases challenging the law. This man, David M. Roth, is one of those cases. He was recently charged by the Westerly police for vandalizing a right-of-way sign outside of his house. It's the Everett Avenue right-of-way going down to the beach in Watch Hill, which is a town-designated right-of-way. So the police said that he was going there and spray painting it to the point that you couldn't tell that it was a right-of-way sign. He apparently, according to the police report, is upset because he doesn't think it's a legitimate right-of-way. He thinks it's private property that people shouldn't be using.
Isabella, what will you be keeping an eye on in the year ahead when it comes to this fight over shore access in Rhode Island?
We'll be looking ahead to see how these town council elections pan out because town councilors have a lot of influence in this area.
Alex, what will you be keeping an eye on in the year ahead when it comes to this fight over shore access in Rhode Island?
Septuagenarian vandals. Alleged.
Yeah.
I think these individual cases, especially in Westerly, I think there could be decisions made there. There could be settlements in those cases. And it's really going to come down to the details, really.
All right. Alex, Isabella, thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you.
You can watch Isabella and Alex's episodes about shoreline access on Rhode Island PBS's YouTube page or at ripbs.org. You can also see ongoing coverage of the issue at thepublicsradio.org. Rhode Island Report is a production of the Boston Globe in collaboration with Rhode Island PBS. Today's episode was produced by Megan Hall. Audio mixing and mastering by Marissa Ewing of Hemlock Creek Productions. Our music is from APM. Be sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I'm Ed Fitzpatrick. See you next week. Looking to binge watch all your favorite PBS shows? You need Rhode Island PBS Passport. Masterpiece, Antiques Roadshow, Rhode Island PBS Weekly, and many more. Watch them all, anytime, and from any streaming device. Learn more about this member benefit at ripbs.org/passport. That's ripbs.org.